Hi, my name is Aine Maunsell and I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate at Munster Technological University. The title of my research is The Integration of the Irish Language into the Gaeltacht Tourism Experience, a study of linguistic and sustainable tourism. My supervisors are Dr. Sophie Price, Professor Maurice O'Leary and Dr. Eamon O'Naughton. To begin, I'm going to give you a brief explanation of what Gaeltacht areas are. Gaeltacht areas are recognised areas in Ireland where the Irish language is widely spoken within the community. As you can see from the map, they are mostly located along the west coast and have traditionally faced issues such as depopulation and lack of employment and development opportunities. So this has led to a decline in the number of Irish speakers and a decline in the language itself. These communities rely heavily on farming and fishing, and more recently on tourism. So I'm quickly just going to explain the role of Údarás na Gaeltachta. So Údarás was founded in the 1980s and it's the semi-state organisation responsible for the economic, social and cultural development of the Gaeltacht. So they basically aim to foster growth in the Gaeltacht areas through funding and research, for example by giving grants to small business and providing support to startups. So Údarás are kindly funding part of this research. The aim of this research is to examine how communities in the Kerry Gaeltacht and the relevant supporting bodies can better respond to the unique opportunities that are presently available in these regions. It specifically focuses on the potential of the Irish language and its role in cultural development in ways that are sustainable in economic, cultural and environmental terms. So now this is just a brief discussion on the justification of the research. So tourism has grown along the west coast of Ireland since the introduction of the Wild Atlantic Way in 2015. This 2,500 kilometre long driving route stretches all along the west coast of Ireland from Mallinhead to Misenhead, and it offers visitors breathtaking scenery and a range of cultural tourist experiences. So Gaeltacht areas actually make up 25% of this route. Gaeltacht regions basically give visitors to the area a chance to engage with the Irish language, which in itself is the gateway to authentic Irish culture. For example, music, poetry, folklore and heritage sites. However, little has been done to capitalise on this, both in terms of research and development. This slide just gives you an overview of the potentially beneficial relationship between tourism and Irish. For the Gaeltacht communities, tourism offers employment and opportunities for business development. This could help revitalise these rural communities. What Irish can bring to the table is that it gives tourism a USP, new products to differentiate these communities from the rest of Ireland, and it can give the visitor an authentic Irish cultural experience. Language planning plays a significant role in this research, so I'm just going to touch on this for a minute. There's a substantial language planning process being undertaken in the Gaeltacht communities at present. The Government of Ireland is aiming to increase the daily number of Irish speakers from almost 78,000 speakers to 250,000 by 2030. So at the moment, 26 plans are being drawn up and implemented throughout the Gaeltacht communities. 2 of these plans are relevant to this research. So I just looked at these plans and to see how they tackle tourism as it's such a staple industry in these communities. Next, I'm going to just talk about the findings of my research. So the data set consisted of 15 semi-structured interviews. This sample included networks, representatives from development authorities, language planning and local community development groups. The most obvious finding was that Irish was the biggest differentiator between the Gaeltacht and the rest of Ireland. However, it's extremely underused and underdeveloped as a cultural tourism resource. So many interviewees pointed out that the Irish language and the Gaeltacht status of these regions could be considered a unique selling point, but it has to be something that the business owners want to do. So one of the interviewees said that it would require a certain level of confidence on behalf of those initiating the conversation. Somebody else expressed concern about the lack of visibility of the language in Dingle, which is a popular tourist destination in my study area. And finally, interviewee 2 highlighted the importance of publicising the language and ways to engage with it. In terms of establishing a value for the Irish language, it was found that it needs to be looked at from 2 perspectives, that of the local community and that of the tourist. It also needs to be looked at from both a monetary and a cultural perspective. So what is it worth in euros and what is it worth culturally? Regarding the tourist interview, one asked the question, like, what are their values when it comes to the Irish language? Interview before then discussed the importance of instilling a pride of language in the local community. So the visitor's accessibility to the language was another massive issue that came up in the findings. So tourism experiences can be provided through Irish upon request, but more of an effort needs to be made to provide Irish or bilingual experiences on a more regular basis. So interviewee 10 discussed the notion of the proactive offer, where local businesses intentionally greet their customers through Irish, and that gives them an opening to start a conversation in Irish. There also needs to be sufficient trainings and support from development authorities. So interviewee 12 suggested a brief online course for business employees on just using Irish to greet their customers. The next finding was just about approaches to tourism development. So it was found that an emphasis should be placed on a bottom-up approach, but there needs to be sufficient top-down approaches from the development authorities and from the government, with interviewing 14 saying that it needs to go right down to a grassroots level. From a language planning perspective, interviewee 4 agreed with the bottom-up approach as it addressed the community needs, but it needs to be, again, supplemented by the top-down approach. So this slide just discusses the finding of targeting and developing existing markets. So over 100,000 students have visited the Gaeltacht of Corcaigwina since the Irish College summer camps began in the 1960s. These courses are worth €2.2 million alone to the local economy on an annual basis. Interviewee 14 points to the fact that these children who attend the courses have parents who come and they might stay for a weekend in the area. So there's a potential market there that could definitely be developed. There's also a market for the families whose children attend Irish-speaking schools, past pupils of those schools, and those who are studying the Irish at third level. So just to conclude and recap, further research is required to establish the value of the Irish language, both monetarily and culturally. There are currently a lot of different projects and potential ideas in the Gaeltacht at the moment, but they need to be tied together. There needs to be more holistic approach taken with regards to development, and it needs to include the community, tourism groups and language planners. There's also a market for the Irish language and holidays packaged around that needs to be further developed. Thank you very much.